Dr. Hovind, I love your doctoral thesis. I've torn it to pieces with house and gaffle. I can't remember when I last pissed myself laughing. It's a good thing the thesis mopped the piss off the floor.
Welcome to part 22 of this read-through and peer review of Kent Hovind's doctoral dissertation, which was published on wikileaks.org on December the 9th, 2009. If you have not yet seen the previous episodes in this series, then I recommend that you go back and see those first, as in this episode I will start off exactly where I left off in the last. In the last episode, Kent was telling us how the ideas of Karl Marx were influenced by the book of Charles Darwin, even though Karl Marx came up with his ideas before Darwin published his book. Kent continues. Even though Marx was rich, he claimed to take the cause of the poor class. By the way, in every communist country today, there are still only two classes, the extremely rich and the extremely poor. You mean like in Russia before communism and China before communism? And if you take into account the disparity in wealth in the US without communism. Communism does not solve the problem it claims it is going to solve. It only worsens the problem. Actually, Kent, communism isn't such a bad idea. It's just taking a good idea a little to extremes. And just like capitalism, which is also quite a good idea, if left in the hands of greedy, ruthless bastards to implement, then everything comes down around your ears. You see, it's the greedy, ruthless bastards in charge that are the problem. You see, Kent, you can still have an oppressive society, even if that society is capitalistic or even democratic. Because your point of view, it depends entirely on whether you are on the side that is oppressed or the side that is oppressing. Take the United States, for example. Before the abolition of slavery, you would be hard-pressed to find a black person who was actually glad to be in America. You see, they were either a slave or they were a fugitive having escaped from slavery. And in fact, your Bible says absolutely nothing against slavery. In fact, it actually endorses it. But enough of my thoughts. Back to Kent's crap. Because of the idea of development by class struggle, Marx readily accepted Darwin's book when it was published in 1859. By December 1859, just 2 months after Darwin's book was published, Marx and Engels were corresponding concerning Darwin's book. And what were they saying, Kent? Did it go along the lines of, "Thank you for a wonderful Christmas present. It'll be something new to read on the bus into work"? No? Well, it was just a guess. They said that it was exactly what they were waiting for to justify their class struggle. Marx strongly emphasized that environmental influence, like Lamarck had discussed, brackets, the belief that certain traits that are acquired can be passed on genetically to the next generation, close brackets, could affect the rate of evolution in humanity. He said that if the environment were changed, people would evolve faster. And believe it or not, Kent, that's actually quite true. I mean, we're not talking about the development of superpowers or a third eye or an extra limb. No, we're talking about more subtle things than that. There is very definite evidence of evolution occurring today within the human race. Take the genetic blood disorder, sickle cell anemia, for instance. The sickle cell trait is rather prevalent naturally in tropical and subtropical areas. For instance, 1/3 of all indigenous inhabitants of sub-Saharan Africa carry the gene. Yes, the disadvantage is that somebody with sickle cell anemia has a life expectancy into the early 40s. However, that person has a natural immunity to malaria. Now you see, as a child without the sickle cell trait, you are more likely to die of malaria as a child. But if you have the sickle cell trait, then you are completely immune, and therefore you will reach adulthood and you will have children and you will pass that gene along. And over time, that particular gene will become very prevalent in that population. So the people in sub-Saharan Africa over time have evolved a natural immunity to malaria far faster than somebody just south of the Arctic Circle where there is no malaria. You see, it is entirely possible for an Eskimo, for instance, to acquire a natural immunity to malaria, but as there is no malaria where Eskimos live, there's no advantage, and therefore that gene does not become prevalent in that population unless it gives a benefit to those people. It's very simple, really, when you think about it. But anyway, Kent continues. He thought that evolution could be controlled or accelerated then by handling factors in the environment. Just because somebody reads something and has an idea, it doesn't mean to say that idea is correct. I mean, look at you, for instance. You've read all sorts of things, I'm sure, and you've had all sorts of ideas, and none of those are correct. In fact, it's fair to say that most of the crap you come out with is down and out wrong. But anyway, Marx wrote two very famous books that radically changed the world: The Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital. Yes, Kent, that's generally because they were read and taken aboard and acted on by a bunch of greedy, ruthless bastards. But anyway, Marx wrote in a poem one time, "I wish to avenge myself against the one who rules above... ... And he has certainly accomplished that. So he was convinced that there was someone who ruled above. So he wasn't an atheist then. Kent, go look up the dictionary definition of an atheist, please. But anyway, because of Marx's doctrine of communism, belief in God was outlawed, Bibles were outlawed, and millions of people have lost their lives in various countries around the world. Kent, correct me if I'm wrong here, but a few pages back you went and said that communism spread into countries where they didn't believe in God. Countries with atheistic religions. You know, like China. Well, you see, my question is, if that's the case, why would they have to outlaw God and the Bible? One for you to mull over there in your cell. Anyway, on Judgment Day, Marx will be responsible for the lives and blood of millions of people. And there's me thinking it's Cyberdyne Systems and Skynet. Marx, with his bitter hatred towards God, developed communism. Yes, Kent, but the real problem, the problem at heart, though, is that complete and utter despotic nutjobs like Stalin implemented it.